everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Let me see. I need to take my glasses off, but first I'll take a look at you and see that you're there. So I'm going to read just the first few pages of the last story in this collection, and it's called Chinese Opera. The Buhovskys were at the Chinese Opera the night Danny McSween was murdered. The three of them, Simone, her sister Juliet, and their father, had been there all day, from 9 in the morning to be precise, and were not released from the performance until 10 that night. The coroner's report said that he had died somewhere between 8 and midnight, so his death might not have occurred during the performance, but rather when they were eating dinner later. The exact time was not crucial. Still, Simone would always think of the actors' endless wailing and the excruciatingly slow movements and their white painted faces whenever she thought of Danny McSween's last moments. Their father had a long tradition of dragging them to such events. When they were small, Simone was sure he searched carefully for the most tedious and difficult performances to bring them to. She thought he was trying to teach them something, patience perhaps, or tolerance. But now that she was 12, her older self realized that he simply had had no idea what torture these outings were for young children, and she was convinced that he thought she and Juliet enjoyed them as much as he did. He liked to refer to the three of them as a trio. Simone always imagined them as a trio of flute, violin, and piano, though she could not say who was which instrument. But as she got older, she could not think why her imagination had settled on such shrill and plucky instruments. They were really much more like bassoons and violas, unassuming and hard-working. It was especially cold the day they went to see the Chinese opera, the day that Danny McSween died, and it was cold in the theater too. Simone kept her coat and gloves on the whole time. She imagined, however, that the actors were warm enough. They were heavily clad, and their movements, as slow as they were, seemed to require a lot of effort. Each placement of the foot, each slow swoop of the hand, even the eyes labored, prowling slowly, meeting the gaze of the enemy or a lover. At first she enjoyed the performance. She liked the feel of the gong reverberating in her legs and in her heart, and was amused by the costumes and the stories, the details of which were outlined in the program. She fell into a sort of trance, concentrating on color, sound, and movement without thinking about the plot or the cacophony. But after the one intermission, during which the three of them ate black bread with butter and honey that their father had prepared at home, she grew increasingly bored. Danny McSween was their favorite of their neighbor's 7 sons. There was quite a difference in age between the oldest sons, who were twins and lived together in South America, where they worked for a philanthropic organization, and the youngest, who had graduated from high school the year before. Danny was right in the middle, the quietest of all the McSween boys. With the 2 younger boys, Simone and Juliet played catch, but though both girls were athletically inclined, they were no match for the McSween boys, who included the 2 of them in their games nonetheless. Perhaps, Simone thought, because they secretly longed for sisters. But what they really looked forward to were the nights when Danny McSween babysat. As soon as their father was out the door, the excitement would begin. The first step was to clear the living room, move everything, the couch, the chairs, tables, rugs, through the kitchen and into the family room. They did this efficiently and carefully, making sure not to scrape the walls or scuff the wooden floors. "You don't know how lucky you are to have wooden floors," Danny McSween said every time. "Carpeting is the scourge of the modern world. How on earth is anyone supposed to dance on carpeting?" When all the living room furniture was piled into the family room, they changed into their dance clothes. Danny McSween wore special shoes and wonderful black pants with pleats. He had a collection of silk shirts, pink and purple and green. Simone and Juliet put on their good school shoes. One night Simone got to wear pants and lead while Juliet wore a dress and followed, and the next time they switched roles. Danny McSween had a collection of records that he carried in a green patent leather satchel he had bought in New York specifically for that purpose. They always started with waltzes and ended with the cha-cha, their favorite. His favorite was the tango, which Simone found a little embarrassing, especially when he insisted on more passion. "Where's the passion?" he would call over the music. "More passion, more passion." At the end of the dance sessions, they had always put the furniture back exactly right so their father wouldn't notice. Though he would not have minded, would have been happy to know that they were having such a good time with Danny McSween. Still, Danny had made them promise not to tell anyone, and they never did, not even after he was dead. Because they did not learn about Danny's death until 2 days after it happened, because they were not, they did not, I cut some things to make it fit the time. They did not learn about Danny's death until 2 days after it happened, because they were not in the McSweens' inner circle. So they learned about his death from the local newspaper, The Suburbanite. On the front page, there was a photo of Danny McSween in his chef's uniform. He had just graduated from the Culinary Institute of America the spring before and had moved to New York, where he had gotten a job at a restaurant with stars. The newspaper said that he had been found in his apartment in Greenwich Village, shot in the back of the head, execution style they called it. They did not go to the funeral. Their father avoided religious ceremonies of any kind, even weddings, and tried to have as little as possible to do with all things religious, though he was a great admirer of liturgical music, especially Russian Orthodox, which he played at full volume while they cleaned the house every Saturday morning. Despite his appreciation for religious music, it was a matter of principle with him to fight against what he called the forces of unreason in his own quiet way, as he did when he was drafted into the army and refused to declare a religion on the official paperwork. Even when the superior officer explained that they needed a religion so that they would know how to dispose of the body if he died, their father was unbending. "You can just leave me there for the vultures, like the Zoroastrians do," her father had said. Every time he told the story, Simone could not help but imagine her father dead, the vultures pecking at his flesh, his eyes, and when he came to that part, she always laughed so as not to let on that she was frightened. "Like who?" the officer had said. "The Zoroastrians," her father answered. "Is that a religion?" "Yes," her father had said. "They leave their dead exposed to the elements and the vultures in what they call the Tower of Silence." "How do you spell that?" the officer had asked. Her father had spelled it out for him. The man had grabbed the form, crossed out none, and written Zoroastrian. "There, now you have a religion. Now you can die." Still, even though Simone was afraid to see it, she felt they should be there to watch Danny McSween's body be let down into the earth, to throw a clump of dirt onto the coffin as she had seen mourners do in movies. "Don't you think we should go?" she asked her father just an hour before the funeral was to begin. "It's much more important to pay our respects afterward," he explained. "They won't even notice who's at the church." "But for Danny," Simone said. "Do you think he was a believer?" he asked. "I don't know, we never talked about it," Simone said. "Well, if he wasn't, he would have preferred us not to go," he said. "But we don't know whether he was or wasn't," she argued. "No, we don't," he said, leaving her with nothing to argue against, for one cannot argue with incertitude. "What if it were a Zoroastrian funeral?" Simone asked. "Would we go then?" "Maybe," he said. "At least then it would be all out in the open." "What would be out in the open?" she asked. "Everything," he said. "Everything we don't want to see." "Like the wound?" she asked. "Like the wound," he replied, taking her in his arms, for she had begun to cry.